As a life science leader, your job is to make high-stakes decisions. Scientific Accessions brings you candid conversations with executives, innovators, and healthcare disruptors who've navigated launches in some of the most complex therapeutic areas. If you're building something ambitious and you want to hear how others at the top are navigating uncertainty, competition, and growth, this podcast is your competitive edge. So press play. Let's get to work.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Scientific Accessions. I've been wanting to do a series on ecosystems for a long time. And as you would expect, life science ecosystems start in Boston or start in San Francisco, but I didn't start there. I started in a place that was brought to me at Bio 2025, Oklahoma City. Who would have thought that the next innovative area was in the heartland? I didn't until I was convinced. So I'm excited to be here in Oklahoma City and talk with 5 phenomenal leaders who are working to build this ecosystem from scratch. I have with me Carol Curtis, Kelley Dowd, Nicholete Davis, Patrick Lucy, and Madison Jackson. Each of them provide one of the major 4 things that are needed to start an ecosystem. There's an anatomy that's needed to be talked about. There's capital and commercialization. There's infrastructure in place, and then there's talent. Each of them have seen that here in Oklahoma City and provide one piece of that. And what I'm really excited about is I have seen firsthand 10 phenomenal, innovative companies that will come out of here. And you may think, Oklahoma City, yeah, right. But Oklahoma City has been the driver for biotech and innovation for Novartis, for Sanofi. They have brought those innovative therapeutics from here. And I'm excited to see more come out of here. And these 5 will help me demonstrate why Oklahoma City may be the next stop for your innovation. So why don't we start with some quick introductions? I'll go from my right, your left, and start with Kelley.
Hi, I'm Kelley Dowd. I am the Vice President of Operations for the Oklahoma City Innovation District. And I also am the Interim Executive Director for BioTC Oklahoma, which is a bioscience workforce development training center.
Thank you.
I'm Nicholete Davis, Executive Director of OK BioStart. We're an early stage life science accelerator out of the University of Oklahoma, but supporting the 10-county region of Oklahoma City.
My name is Madison Jackson, and I have 13 years in early stage medical device startup companies. And then I went into building out the Build Back Better grant as the project manager, which then had 6 projects around it, which were building out our life science ecosystem, which has included a few of the projects here, OK BioStart and BioTC.
Hi, I'm Carol Curtis. I'm co-founder and CEO of Cadenza Bio. We are a preclinical stage biotech company focused on demyelinating and inflammatory disease.
Patrick Lucy, President and CEO of Wheeler Bio. We are a contract development and manufacturing organization focused on mammalian cell culture based in Oklahoma City.
Awesome. So, flew all the way from ice cold North Carolina to ice cold Oklahoma City to talk with you guys. And super excited because here you get to see the foundation building of a hub. And I'd love to maybe start with a conversation around the anatomy of a hub. Everything is needed, right? You need capital, you need a number of different things to get a hub going. Maybe for the first question, I'd love to talk about your strengths. Oklahoma City and the heartland is known for oil, right? This is a pivot from oil. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're leveraging what was here before and what still is here, but pivoting into biotech? And maybe I'll start with Nicholete as lead.
Okay. I think certainly as we think about building this life science ecosystem and having our legacy and energy, you can certainly leverage some, not necessarily domain expertise, but leadership expertise, right? And you can also leverage potential access to capital, right? That as the economy is changing, there's certainly an interest in diversifying the economic opportunities and industries here in Oklahoma. And you can see that pivot from leaders in oil and gas potentially looking for other opportunities to invest in additional industries. So there's a great deal of interest from leadership in that domain.
capital is absolutely necessary, right? So that's one foundational piece. Maybe Patrick, you want to add something?
Sure. The fact you mentioned that you did not grow up in a hub. I did grow up in a hub in Boston. So my career in biotech pretty much runs the lifespan of the mass biotech evolution. And so when interviewing for this job, Christian Kennedy, one of our founding investors, asked me what one of my biggest challenges would be. And what I told him was, you don't build an oil and gas company in one Kendall Square, and you don't build a biotech company in Oklahoma City. And I need to overcome that stereotype. And coming to Oklahoma City, what I saw as a newcomer here 14 months ago was a significant amount of healthcare activities in a very concentrated location. A lot of people working in healthcare and early stage companies looking to grow in an ecosystem that can benefit from kind of the macro events going on in the world today with regard to reshoring of biopharmaceuticals and building this out in the heartland. And the other element you just talked about, money. There's a lot of concentrated wealth in the Midwest, and I think these people want to build infrastructure in the Midwest. And even Christian's goal is to diversify the economy of Oklahoma City beyond oil and gas. And I think life sciences in particular are a great opportunity for Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
Can I just add to what Patrick said? So I think that we have a high concentration of brilliant scientists here in the state as well. We have great research institutions with OU and OSU, and then we have the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. And these are scientists that have been well-funded for years and have been doing really innovative science and really create that infrastructure foundation that we need to build upon.
Awesome. You guys have addressed the capital, you've addressed workforce and innovation, you've addressed transition, right, and evolution of a hub a little bit. Madison, anything to add there?
I think the other factor is Oklahoma City is the world's smallest big town. If you're in Boston or San Diego, I mean, there is so much, and I have received feedback from those places that sometimes it's almost too much because they can't just pick up the phone and call Patrick or call Kelley just on a day because they need advice for something, or they've got someone coming in town and want to pull them into this meeting. And so it is nice because you have this, like, everyone is going toward one mission of trying to help each other build the community, grow. And so it helps break down some of those silos just because it's easier to pull everyone together to work toward one common goal. Because if one company succeeds, it helps the rest of everyone succeed.
And what we didn't talk about was workforce specifically. So, Kelley, you want to add something?
I think what's happened organically that I find very interesting is that we do have all these different access points to potential healthcare jobs, potential lab jobs, potential biotech jobs. And it hasn't necessarily up to this point been a concerted effort run by any one major organization. But we can talk about this more, but there are so many access points that provide ability and opportunity to Oklahomans and to convince and incentivize them to stay and grow our biotech economy. And that is everything from our major R1 universities to our robust career tech and community college system, and then some newcomers in the market like BioTC Oklahoma that are providing additional training, access, and opportunities to people here in our area.
Awesome. So the foundation sounds like it's there from my perspective. You've got the capital available, which is always the big question. You have the companies like Wheeler and Cadenza, who are both already here doing the work. You have the workforce. You have OSU, OU, technical schools, all available. And you have a little bit of government contribution with funding. So those are the four pieces of the anatomy, which is exciting to hear. I think you go to places that are established, and that's what you see, is you see those four pillars already established and providing input into the ecosystem. Having that early is great, so I'm super excited about that. Now, one thing I always think about, and coming from North Carolina and RTP, We're the hub of CROs and CDMOs, right? Everyone knows if you want to get something manufactured, RTP is the place to go. And that's pretty obvious over the last 6 months to a year with all the investment that's happening from various companies. If you want something innovative, right? You want a new idea, you go to Boston, you go to San Diego, you go to San Francisco, right? So each of them seem to have defined themselves in some way. OKC has the opportunity now, and Oklahoma as a whole has the opportunity now to define itself. I would love for each of you to venture a guess as to who Oklahoma City and Oklahoma will be as a hub ecosystem. Are they an innovator? Are they a manufacturer? Where do you land? What do you think? I'll start with Carol.
Oh boy. I mean, I think, to both Kelley and Patrick here in this room, we are certainly building an infrastructure for biomanufacturing. And I think that is probably the pillar that will be strongest and will work to recruit other companies here. And I'm really excited to see how it's grown over the last several years. And I think that we have kind of the sky's the limit with Wheeler now building even more infrastructure and hiring more people. And I think that sometimes to build biotech companies, early stage biotech companies, or to get bigger companies to come here, you need to kind of have that foundation built. You need to show that you have technical people that are trained. And I see this as kind of an area that we can grow and continue to thrive in building the entire ecosystem as a whole.
So I'll add to that. I'd say we have kind of 5 key areas of focus. Biomanufacturing is number 1. That's a very strong emerging area that also aligns very well with all the federal priorities of reshoring and supply chain resiliency. Another piece is our rural and tribal health. We have 36% of our population's rural, and we're the 2nd largest state in tribal populations. So it gives us a unique set of patient populations, but then also a unique set of programming that we have here that we are focused on expanding. I'd say the 3rd is specialized therapies. OMRF is a center of excellence for autoimmune. That is a very special area that we have. Also, we have agriculture and animal sciences and health. And then the last one would be clinical trials. So Stevenson Cancer Center is number 1 in patient enrollment for NCI clinical trials. And so among OMRF, OU, and OSU, we have over, I think, 400 active clinical trials going on right now.
Anyone else? Good? Okay. So yeah, I think the ability of Oklahoma to define itself, maybe as a foundation of biomanufacturing, but also being able to contribute through the multiple institutions available, through the funding that's coming from NCI and other places to run clinical trials. Having this diverse population here, which makes Oklahoma different than Boston or different than San Diego or different than San Francisco, is a phenomenal differentiator than every other hub that's around. So thank you. What have you learned from others, right? So you're new, you're younger. What have you learned from Boston or San Francisco or even not too far away, North Texas, which is now interestingly in this conversation too? What have you learned in developing thus far? Let's start with you, Nicholete, on that.
I think that we can't be what someone else is. We have to really become clear about what we can be and really harness our strengths. And so, to the point that was made earlier, we have these research institutions that have domain expertise. So if we can focus on where our strengths are versus focusing on trying to recreate what someone else is. Also, too, we live in a world now that is very connected, right? 10 years ago, there were so many more burdens or friction to being able to travel, to get places. Now, being able to have collaborative meetings with individuals who are maybe not part of your, local economy, that's much easier. So you can diversify your leadership, you can diversify collaborations if you're able to connect with individuals who have a domain expertise that you need, that you don't necessarily have in this particular area. I think that as Oklahoma, we are really trying to focus on where are technologies or the innovations that are most successful or most promising, and really take all of our resources and be able to focus them on those particular technologies versus just throwing as much as we can to a lot of different ideas. We're really trying to say, okay, this is where we see the most promising technology, and specifically in our program at Okie BioStart, that's what we're trying to do, is really focus on where tech has the most potential to have a greater impact, and then leveraging resources both locally and nationally to be able to deliver those results.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right about the ability to collaborate. And what I find fascinating and simple is that we don't think about just flights into a major hub and being able to be in a time zone where you can talk to both the East Coast and the West Coast within your normal day, right? So that is something that Carol and I talked about earlier, but it's key to being able to collaborate around the country at minimum, and even across the globe, right? It's just being in the right time zone and being connected.
I think to add to that, even you think of just physically where we're located, we're at the intersection of the two major highways in the U.S., 35 and 44. Yeah. And so it's a key middle place for meeting. And then also that's something that we've been also exploring with Dallas, is how do we create this I-35 corridor and partner with them in areas, because they're stronger in certain areas and we're stronger in certain areas. And rather than compete with one another, how can we utilize each other? Because 3.5 hours is not that far away. But it is the physical location with the major intersections of the highways. Then you have the distribution channels.
I think, Tabari, I think there are many ecosystems to learn from around the country, and I think what's important is we actually have our own identity, like you were describing. But I also think there's a lot to be learned from these ecosystems, and it seems, at least in my career in biotech, there's a culture in biotech that if everybody does well, if we do well, everyone does well. And so these different ecosystems are willing to share their experiences with the national organization of bio. How do we grow in a way that we're differentiated, but we can live into our own identity? And I think, again, my experience from Massachusetts, 2008, they decided to do the Life Sciences Initiative, right? They invested $1 billion over 10 years. And in 2008, right before the financial crisis, right, and Massachusetts had the fortitude to stick with that plan. And that money, $310 million of that money, unleashed $1 billion of private capital into the biotech ecosystem of Boston. And now that's why Massachusetts is the epicenter of biotech in the world. And I think the three legs of the stool are government, academia, and industry. I feel being in Oklahoma, part of our job as industry is to demonstrate to the stakeholders in the government that this is an industry that can thrive in Oklahoma. So we have to show them a bit of success to gain their trust, to then ask them to help support the industry. Now, certainly, I don't think Oklahoma is going to give us $1 billion, but I do think that there's an opportunity here to nurture this industry, create jobs, build momentum, and then with the tailwinds of biosecure and the reshoring of biopharmaceuticals, I think it's something that we can harness. Now, when you build, and I do agree that the low-hanging fruit is biomanufacturing and even clinical research organizations associated with Stevenson Cancer Center. The longer putt, so to speak, is innovative biotech. And venture capital is very geographic for some reason. People either invest on the East Coast or they invest on the West Coast. And so we've got to drive, when you have those CROs and CDMOs in Oklahoma City, who comes to visit? Innovative biotech companies that are our customers. Show them around, give them experiences at Stevenson, OMRF, OU, and show that there's research going on in this city that's viable, great researchers, and we can keep it home. One of the problems with Massachusetts is they do a lot of innovation, but they lose manufacturing. Okay? We can do a lot of manufacturing, and then if we build innovation as a second wave, we can have both ends of that. So I think that we can learn a lot from other ecosystems. I think people are willing to share their experiences with Oklahoma, but we need a cohesive plan in Oklahoma to build this industry, but also outside of Oklahoma, and think about the Midwest as a region, not just a state of Oklahoma.
Yeah. Absolutely. And thank you for a great segue into the next section. As we think about capital, right? To your point and to what we see, capital is regional today. I don't believe that forever capital will be regional, but it always takes a regional seed to grow that capital tree. And so how is Oklahoma addressing that? Like we said earlier, there's a lot of funding here. There's a lot of money around. A lot of it's focused on energy and agriculture. How do we reposition that money into biotech, life sciences? Go ahead, Carol.
I'll start maybe. So I think we have a really strong ecosystem of venture capital that is willing to take early risk in Oklahoma-based innovations or Oklahoma-based companies. I think it's unique to kind of Oklahoma City, the concentration of those venture capital firms that we have that have risk appetite. I will say, as we grow, I think that we do need to have, larger funds or, as Patrick was saying, some of those from the coast coming in and looking at what we've really built here, because we do need that capital for the next stage. So we have that nice capital to get started, kind of start to bridge the valley of death, start to see some innovations with strategies built behind them and really great opportunities to move forward. But what we need is additional capital to continue growing those innovations and keeping them here in Oklahoma to continue to grow and thrive.
Yeah. This is segueing a bit, but I think there's capital in terms of investing in companies, and there's capital in terms of investing in resources and infrastructure and assets. And, I do think we have really taken advantage of going after federal dollars. It's important to go after federal dollars and state dollars plus the private sector investment. And with federal dollars, they are really focused now on placemaking and regional capacity. And so being able to access federal dollars to build out specific infrastructure pieces, such as the workforce development programs, the bioaccelerator, and then also launching a statewide entity that is meant to be the convener that is driving the strategy for the state is so important.
Patrick?
Yeah, I think that one of the benefits of Oklahoma is that we have the ear of the federal delegation from Oklahoma. I think Stephanie Bice being on the National Security Commission for Biotechnology, being quite supportive and supporting a visit to Oklahoma to learn more about what our needs are in the ecosystem has been refreshing. And so I do think that we have support in terms of the federal delegation from Oklahoma to build this ecosystem. But I do think success begets success. I mean, we've got to deliver on some of these investments. We've got to grow these companies and demonstrate growth. Wheeler's grown 50% in the last 12 months in terms of our workforce. And so I think we get momentum with each of these businesses. Some of these innovative biotech companies have success and attract greater investment from larger funds from outside of the region. This industry is very much about fear of missing out. And so I think that we start to see that as people begin to reinvest in biotech. We've had a couple of down years here, but now coming out of JP Morgan, there's a lot of momentum in this industry. And I think that having these innovative biotechs in Oklahoma show success and attract different funds from outside of Oklahoma creates a momentum, because these people all talk and they all say you need to go down to Oklahoma and talk to some of these people, and it begins to get momentum. So I do think demonstrating business success, showing them some early wins on the innovative side, growing the services businesses here, attracting more visits to Oklahoma will start to begin a snowball effect.
Maybe love to talk through some success stories. So I was here for OK BioStart's Innovation Night, their first Innovation Night, where we saw 10 companies presenting their innovation. Maybe Nicholete, do you want to share a success story or two from them independent of Wheeler and Cadenza, right, which are already successful. Another one.
Yeah, I think we work very early stage with these companies, and so a lot of them are still in proof of concept. But I think last night there was a real clear star that we had at the event, and that would be Chironetic. Chironetic is a collaboration between when GE was actually here. There was a scientist that worked there. And he specifically worked, I think he's a mechanical engineer working with geology, but had met at an innovation district event actually, and they collaborated on potentially using this augmented reality to be able to use it for surgical planning. And lo and behold, 5 years later, they have a company and they have traction in the marketplace. They have contracts with large institutions in California, in Georgia, in Texas, here in Oklahoma. And so I think they've really stood out. Their founders, Dr. Christian Aum and Dr. Jeff Potts, have done a great job in really putting Chironetic and making a significant impact, nationally, but also here in Oklahoma, and really, showing what life science innovation and collaboration with different, how we are building this ecosystem to support these types of incidental meetings where you can discuss innovation and ideas and problems and ways to solve it, but then also giving them infrastructure. A lot of the people at this table have supported Chironetic and being able to see not just OK BioStar. We kind of are working with them now, but they've received a lot of support from the infrastructure here in Oklahoma to be able to see success.
Thank you. And I saw Chironetic, so I played with the AR
reality,
toy.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. Meaning, I'm looking through glasses, and we'll link this in the notes for the show. But you can literally use their augmented reality to help manage surgery, which is Star Trek, right? So I don't know if any of you are Trekkies. I'm a Trekkie. And every time I see these things, I think, oh my God, it's going to happen. We're going to be able to scan each other one day and just know everything that's going on with us. It's happening. But that was, you're right, a standout from last night. It is the furthest along, I believe, of the 10 that I saw. And they've really built a phenomenal innovation here that will help patients at the end of the day. That was university-based, right? Did that come straight out of the university?
Yeah, so the IP was university IP, and then, but the surgeon works for OU, and then Jeff was in industry. He worked at GE, so they had a great opportunity to connect and then develop that IP and be able to, look for opportunities to find market traction. So, and they've done a really good job of being able to do that.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into how innovation happens, right? So it starts typically in an academic institution.
Yes.
There's a great idea that's been developed through non-dilutive funding for those who care about non-dilutive funding, right? Or through grant funding. And it's transferred into industry in some way. How does that work here? Is that, I imagine it's the same, but there's a different level of partnership, it sounds like, that happens here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think it's still emerging very much, but we are really trying to look for opportunity for those types of chance meetings where you can have industry and academia meet to really solve, clinical problems. So you're not just thinking clinically what are the potential problems, or doing a deep dive into what the research says, but you're taking a time to actually speak with a clinician about what that real world problem is, and then be able to come up with solutions. So we are definitely merging along that line. Also, too, are emerging along that line. I think what is really unique, about what we're doing at OK BioStart is, that we have these research scientists who have something that could be really compelling and life-changing and have a significant clinical impact. But they are faculty members, right? They're researchers, and so they do not necessarily have the expertise to commercialize. And so our real focus is to be able to, instead of trying to train them to be entrepreneurs, our goal is to really remove that and do that work and that legwork for them. So the scientists you saw last night are part of our program, and they have program managers who actually do a lot of the commercial due diligence and get feedback from area expertise and from national experts that can give us strategic direction of what to do next and how to answer those very specific questions. So we're taking that more programmatic design to translation instead of saying, okay, we want you as the scientist to do all of this, and then we'll try to find you a partner, but can we actually bring some of that here to Oklahoma and develop their asset to a point where you could do co-development or partnerships at a later stage and make that more programmatic design versus, you know, an individual experience for each faculty member who has a compelling research idea.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholete.
Yeah, and I would just emphasize just how important Nicolete's program is, because I've seen in other states where they have accelerators, but they're not bio-focused. And bio is just so different. You've got to think about the reimbursement, the regulatory. And what I've seen happen many times is startups have a great idea. They might even get it through clinical trials, but then they haven't at the beginning done the research to understand there's three customers. There's the payer, the provider, and the patient. And you have to find the value proposition for all three. And even if you have two, but the third one you don't, it's not going to succeed. I was part of a heart pump early stage company, and they had an innovative way to save like infants from pediatric deaths. And at the end of the day, they realized after they had already been awarded over $6 million in federal funds that insurance wouldn't pay for it because they're looking at a 5-year cost horizon. And what happens is if it's more expensive for the person to live, the insurance isn't going to pay for that new device. I heard a story the other week of a company in Arkansas, same thing, where they built this really innovative new prosthetic ankle. And it was great. The patients loved it. It was so much better than what they had. But the insurance companies wouldn't pay for the $10,000 ankle because the $2,000 one that didn't move or have much mobility or flexibility to it, it worked okay. And so that is why it is so important for these companies to have access to a program that really specializes in that piece.
Absolutely. Carol and I talked about
We
that
talked
earlier.
about that, yes.
Yeah, I literally.
It's a critical issue at an early stage. But I was going to talk a little bit about your question around non-dilutive funding. So we do have some resources here that help with SBIR, Blueprint, some of these programs that are federal level, but opportunities to really fuel commercialization at that earliest stage as companies are emerging from academia. And then we have state resources. So there's a state grant that really tries to fund innovative opportunities that have a potential commercialization aspect. So we do have some of those non-dilutive sources and resources available here.
All right, so that's funding, right? So we talked the initial anatomy, we talked about funding. Let's talk about infrastructure. So infrastructure means like buildings, right? Are there buildings for people besides academia to come and land their business? I mean, we're sitting in one right now, so we are in a lab, FYI, that is beautiful and massive and ready to go. But I'd love to hear maybe from Kelley, what infrastructure, physical infrastructure is in place here?
Yeah, so one of the amazing things more broadly about Oklahoma City is that there's been a huge amount of investment by our own people, by our own citizens into increasing the livability of this city. We have chosen as a community, as citizens of Oklahoma City, to tax ourselves a penny sales tax for over 20 years now, and that has done everything from bring, the Oklahoma City Thunder to town to funding the building that we're sitting in. So this building, Innovation Hall, is a city-owned building that was funded through taxpayers' dollars, but also private funding, and it sits in a brand new development called Convergence. There's an 8-story tower next door, and there are some amazing tenants already in that tower, but it is available for more, and it is located in the heart of the Innovation District, and that's exactly the types of companies and people that we want to attract, in particular to this area of the city, but the city overall.
Yeah, maybe Patrick, you're here, right? You've landed at Wheeler. Tell us a little bit about the infrastructure that you landed into, and then maybe transition that into the talent that you bring in to work at Wheeler, if that's okay.
Sure. So in terms of infrastructure, as Kelley points out, Wheeler is the proud owner of 2 floors of that building across the way, and we're eager to build that out. Right now, we have about 50,000 square feet of beautiful cement slab that's looking for a reason to be built out, and I think we are in the near term going to begin building out the third floor in analytical development, process development laboratories, and pilot plants. Right now, our infrastructure consists of a GMP manufacturing facility in downtown Oklahoma City, and we also lease laboratories on OU Research Park. The opportunity next door in this innovation district is we'd be adjacent to this biotech training center in kind of innovation hub, and begin foot traffic in this area to foster kind of what the goal was for this build out and this expansion. So we're eager to do it, and I think in 2026 we'll begin building out the third floor. In terms of building the talent to fill those facilities, like I said earlier, we've increased our workforce by 50% in 2025. That's about 50 individuals have joined Wheeler, and I'd say 85% of those people were hired locally. We did bring people in from different areas of the country based on expertise, but most of those individuals are from Oklahoma, from this ecosystem. An interesting aspect of the Biotech Training Center is that 4 of the individuals that we've hired came through this training center with absolutely no experience in biomanufacturing or biotech, put them through the training center here and hired them directly, and they're still working at Wheeler several months later, and they're great employees because they're never thought they'd have an opportunity to work in the biotech industry, and they're thrilled to be part of it. And so I think there's a huge workforce here that's willing to be trained. We need to begin scaling to bring those individuals into the industry. But I think Oklahoma City is well positioned with this training center and the university system here to supply us the necessary people to scale our business.
Thank you for that. That's great. I think I read a stat as I was preparing for this conversation that there are 31,000 workers in the biotech space in central Oklahoma, which sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for more, because you're building out, and if there are other companies that are building, then there's an opportunity here that could really expand and lift this area in the biosciences, life sciences space. So I'd love to maybe transition to talk a little bit more about talent and let Kelley tell us a little bit about how the talent is being developed. I know you've got BioTC. Would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so, in addition to some brilliant scientists, as Carol mentioned earlier, when you build a company like Wheeler or some of the other local companies, you have to have talent at all levels. It's not all PhD level scientists. Right. So it is helping people with the awareness that those jobs exist, and getting them into those jobs and meeting them where they're at in terms of what is accessible to them. And so what I alluded to earlier is Oklahoma City has done really well is we've got a ton of different pathways for people to get into this industry. Oklahoma City Public Schools is establishing a new biotech pathway at 2 of the local high schools, one of which is less than a mile from here, located in Northeast Oklahoma City within the Innovation District. And that is a biotech program that is going to help provide high schoolers in the area with hands-on training with scientific equipment. They're working with other local community colleges and career techs to expand high schoolers' access to that. So that's one pathway. We've got OSU OKC, which has an associate's degree in biomanufacturing sciences. So that provides people with a 2-year opportunity to get into the biomanufacturing space. The University of Oklahoma has, as part of their engineering department, engineering school, the Bioprocessing Core Lab, which is a lab that both provides an asset for researchers on the University of Oklahoma campus, access to industry-specific equipment, but also provides enrolled students at OU access and learning towards industry norms and industry equipment beyond just what they would find in an academic lab. And then finally, last but certainly not least, you have BioTC Oklahoma. And what we are trying to do is provide short course hands-on training to people. Some individuals may not have a degree, some may be trying to upskill or reskill or re-entering the workforce trying to switch careers. And so our programming is from a few days up to 3 weeks. And so it really is focused not so much on the academic side, but really the hands-on touch labor experience with equipment that is the same that you find at a Wheeler Bio or in advanced academic research labs. And so we are trying to prepare our trainees for jobs throughout the healthcare ecosystem, everything from basic lab fundamentals, aseptic technique, gowning, lab safety, good documentation practices, all the way up to more sophisticated training on bioreactor assembly, chromatography, column packing, and things more high level for biomanufacturing jobs.
Yeah, I just wanted to go on that point that Kelley just made about the linkage between these training centers and industry. And Madison made the point earlier that this ecosystem in Oklahoma, people are only a phone call away or a text away or what have you. And so Wheeler collaborated on the establishment of the core lab at OU. The equipment that is in the core lab at OU is consistent with the equipment we use in Wheeler, same as this lab we're sitting in. The equipment that they have in BioTC is consistent with the equipment we have. So when these individuals come through the core lab at OU or come through the training center, they're not learning on some antiquated academic technologies. They're actually working on state-of-the-art technologies that companies like Wheeler are using every day. And so the collaboration between industry and academia, we talked about earlier, is exemplified in Oklahoma. So the people that are trained in this system or in the academic system, when they come into Wheeler, they're ready to go. And so I think that's an example of the close collaboration you see in Oklahoma between government, industry, and academia.
And one thing I'll add to that is people ask, well, why do you have two workforce development programs? They're not competing, they're complementary. With any type of biomanufacturing or biotech companies, they need 50% technician entry level, they need 50% graduate or undergraduate level. And so we structured it where each has different sets of equipment. They can complement each other, go in and out of each other's labs if needed, but then they're also just training totally different subsets of the workforce piece. And then one exciting story that I found with that's related to Wheeler in BioTC is they had a participant go through the program. They were a barista, did 4 days of training, and then went to Wheeler and now has a great job with an annual salary and benefits. Yeah. And I think that's an incredible success story that we hope to see more of.
I'll add one more success story. All four of those individuals have very fascinating stories, but one of the other ones was working full-time and trying to take individual classes at a community college as she earned money to do that so that she didn't have to go into debt. And so she decided to come through our program where she got a job with Wheeler, earning that same salary, and now she's also taking advantage of their amazing program in terms of tuition help, tuition reimbursement. So she's already within the ecosystem, she's getting real life experience, but she's also being supported in going back and continuing her education.
Yeah, that's awesome. When I think about the opportunities that biotech, that life sciences gives across the entire spectrum from entry level all the way up to senior VP, CEO, innovator, it's lovely to hear that here in OKC you're thinking about the entire flywheel, the entire talent pool, and looking to target them all individually with what they need to get to the next step. That, I think, is actually where you're different. I haven't heard that anywhere else before, where you all were excited about sharing that story and sharing those stories. So I think I would put a pin there and say, keep doing that, because that is what really changes what you have here and makes you differentiated from everywhere else. Plus, cost of living in Oklahoma City is not the cost of living in Boston or San Diego or even Raleigh-Durham now. So that is really attractive, I think, not just for companies that are looking to land here, but for those who live here and work here and want to build something new.
I think one more thing I'd like to say is that we would like, everyone in the Midwest doesn't need to build these workforce development training centers. We've got these 2 beautiful facilities with tons of equipment. And so I think one of our goals that we want to start working toward is building partnerships with the surrounding states and region where they can come here, we can train them, rather than everyone in each state investing in all their own equipment and facilities. We have the capability to do that and collaborate. And so that's something that we do want to work on. And I just want to emphasize every state doesn't need to go spend $15, $20 million to do this themselves.
Yeah, I like that. And one thing we talked about as we were prepping was Oklahoma City is not just Oklahoma City, it's the heartland. And the heartland has something that it can contribute en masse to this ecosystem and to life sciences as a whole. And what I'm hearing is that Oklahoma City's open for handshakes, right? Let's figure out how we partner together across the heartland to make sure that we're the rising tide that lifts all boats in our area. Is that fair?
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Well, guys, this has been an awesome conversation. I want to thank each of you individually for being willing to deal with me over the last few weeks and being willing to tell us more about Oklahoma City and really help others understand what you're building here. I'm excited. I was excited at Bio 2025 when I heard about it. So excited that I flew out here to see it myself. So if I can do it, I think there are a lot of other big companies and a lot of other small innovative companies that could come out here and do the same thing. Is there any last statements anyone wants to make?
Good.
Nope.
Thanks, Tabari.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for joining us here on Scientific Sessions. This episode was phenomenal. I'm so excited about this geography and what it will contribute to the life sciences. And I look forward to continuing this series in other geographies. So look for those soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Scientific Sessions, unscripted conversations with those shaping the future of biotech. If you found value in today's discussion, be sure to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We release regular conversations with leaders across biotech, pharma, and medtech, all aimed with helping you stay ahead of industry trends. And if this resonated with you, please consider sharing it with a colleague or your network, because the more voices we can bring to the table, the stronger our community becomes. So until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep shaping the future of life sciences.